Dr. Jack Murphy was having one of those days. You know, the kind where you're just trying to do your job, minding your own business, excavating a previously undiscovered cave system in the Australian Outback, and the universe decides to completely upend everything you thought you knew about human history. That kind of day. "Hey Doc, you might want to take a look at this," called out Tommy, his graduate student assistant. Tommy was the kind of person who got excited about literally everything, from ancient pottery shards to unusually shaped rocks. So Jack wasn't exactly rushing to see what probably amounted to yet another prehistoric kangaroo bone. "If it's another petrocanth fossil, Tommy, I swear I'm cutting your stipend," Jack shouted back, but he was already making his way over. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dig site, and Jack had to squint to see where Tommy was frantically waving from the mouth of the cave they'd opened up earlier that morning. No, sir. Definitely not a petrocanth. Unless petrocanths were made of metal and glass about 40,000 years ago. That got Jack's attention. He picked up his pace, trying not to look too eager. He had a reputation for being the boring, methodical type to maintain, after all. But when he reached Tommy's position, all pretense of academic detachment went right out the window. There, nestled in the red soil of the cave floor, was something that absolutely, positively should not exist. It was rectangular, about the size of Jack's palm, with a sleek metallic edge and what appeared to be a cracked but intact screen. In fact, if Jack didn't know better, he'd say it looked exactly like. "Is that an iPhone?" Tommy asked, voicing the ridiculous thought that had just crossed Jack's mind. "Don't be absurd," Jack replied automatically, even as his brain struggled to come up with a better explanation. "This layer is dated to roughly 40,000 years ago. The Aboriginal peoples who lived here then were still developing their first tools. They didn't even have pottery, let alone." He trailed off, staring at the object. "Let alone smartphones," Tommy helpfully supplied. "It has to be some kind of contamination," Jack muttered, more to himself than to Tommy. Someone must have dropped their phone here recently, and it somehow got buried even as he said it. He knew it wasn't possible. They'd had to break through several undisturbed layers of sediment to reach this level, and the object was clearly embedded within the ancient soil matrix. Carefully, Jack knelt down and began to clear away more of the surrounding dirt. As he worked, more details became visible. The device was covered in what appeared to be symbols not like any Aboriginal rock art he'd ever seen, but precise, geometric patterns that seemed to glow faintly in the cave's dim light. Doc, Tommy's voice had taken on a strange tone. "It's doing something." The symbols were indeed glowing brighter now, pulsing with a soft blue light that definitely wasn't a reflection of their work lamps. And then, because the universe apparently hadn't made Jack's day weird enough yet, the device made a sound that he would swear on his PhD thesis was the classic Nokia ringtone. "Please tell me you're recording this," Jack said weakly. "Oh, I've been live streaming to Instagram since I first saw it," Tommy replied cheerfully. "We're trending." Jack closed his eyes and counted to 10. When he opened them again, the device was still there, still glowing, and still making that infernal ringtone. And now he could see what appeared to be a notification popping up on its cracked screen. "Welcome back, humans. Parental controls expire in 3 days, 7 hours, 42 minutes. "Well," Jack said after a long moment, "I suppose this means I'm going to have to rewrite my entire dissertation." "Look on the bright side," Tommy said, already typing away on his modern, decidedly not prehistoric phone. "At least you'll be famous. The hashtag #KaviPhone is already going viral." Jack Murphy, PhD candidate, and soon to be center of what would probably be the biggest archaeological controversy since the Piltdown Man hoax, put his head in his hands and wondered if it was too late to switch to studying something nice and simple, like quantum physics, or underwater basket weaving. The Nokia ringtone continued to play, echoing off the cave walls like the world's most anachronistic archaeological discovery. And somewhere, Jack was pretty sure, the universe was laughing at him. It took exactly 17 minutes for the black SUVs to arrive, which Jack found suspicious for 2 reasons. First, they were in the middle of the Australian Outback, at least 3 hours from the nearest town with a decent coffee shop. Second, he counted 12 identical vehicles, which seemed like overkill even for a government response to an apparently prehistoric smartphone. "Good afternoon," Dr. Murphy said, a woman in a black suit who was already sweating profusely in the afternoon heat. I'm Agent Dana Thompson with the Department of... She frantically patted her pockets before pulling out a small notebook. Sorry, just let me check my cover story. I always mix these up. Jack stared at her. Did you just admit this is a cover story? No, she said quickly, stuffing the notebook back into her pocket. Yes, this is a routine inspection of dangerous, archaeological, weather balloons, she finished weakly, then turned to whisper to another agent. Jim, I think I mixed up the weather balloon story with the archaeological one again. Tommy, who was still live streaming everything, helpfully pointed his phone toward Agent Thompson. Don't worry, I can edit that part out later. Oh, thank goodness, Agent Thompson said, visibly relieved. Then her eyes widened. Wait, are you recording this? You can't record this. This is a classified thing, operation. She checked her notebook again. Operation, definitely not aliens. That's the actual operation name, Jack asked incredulously. No, of course not, Agent Thompson scoffed. The actual operation name is classified. This is just the public cover name we use to throw people off the scent. She beamed proudly at this explanation. Right, Jack said slowly. Well, I hate to point this out, but Tommy's live stream has already been running for about an hour, and according to his phone, Jack glanced at Tommy, who gave him a thumbs up. We're currently at just over 2 million viewers. Agent Thompson's face went through several interesting expressions before settling on something between panic and resignation. Oh no, not again. This is just like the dolphin incident all over again. The what incident? Nothing. Classified. Never happened. But hypothetically, if intelligent dolphins had contacted us last year, we definitely didn't try to cover it up by claiming they were very talented circus animals who escaped from SeaWorld. She paused. Which also didn't happen. At this point, several other agents were frantically trying to set up a containment perimeter, which mainly consisted of holding up black umbrellas to block the view of the cave. Unfortunately, they seemed to have forgotten that Tommy was already inside the perimeter, still streaming. The prehistoric phone chose this moment to make things worse by playing what sounded suspiciously like the Mission Impossible theme song. Oh, for crying out loud, Agent Thompson muttered, then spoke into her wrist communicator. Base, this is Thompson. We have a code purple. I repeat, code purple. The thing is doing the thing with the music again. Again, Jack asked. What? No. This has never happened before. This is completely unprecedented, she paused. But hypothetically, if something similar had happened in New Mexico last month, we definitely didn't cover it up by claiming it was an elaborate marketing campaign for a new streaming service. Tommy raised his hand. Agent Thompson? The phone is asking if you want to connect to Galactic Net Prime. Should I click yes? No, shouted about 15 agents in unison. Too late. Tommy had already tapped the screen. Welcome to Galactic Net Prime, announced a cheerful voice from the device. Your species' parental controls will be deactivated in approximately 3 days, 7 hours, and 12 minutes. Please note that any attempts to ground your civilization again will require a full council hearing, and seriously, humans, try not to crash into any more suns this time. Agent Thompson looked like she wanted to cry. Base, scratch that code purple. We're now at code Plaid, and someone please call the president, and maybe NASA, and definitely I still can't remember my password for the classified server. Jack watched as the assembled agents descended into chaos, with some trying to confiscate Tommy's phone. He'd already backed up the stream to cloud storage, others arguing about proper containment protocols for ancient alien technology. The umbrellas weren't helping. And Agent Thompson attempting to organize a press conference. Her suggestion of maybe we can tell them it's a very advanced boomerang was not well received. So Tommy said, sidling up to Jack, do you think this will help my chances of getting published in Nature? Jack just sighed and watched as Agent Thompson tried to classify the air around the cave as a state secret. It was going to be a very long 3 days. It took precisely 47 minutes for the ancient smartphone to get tired of watching humans run around like headless chickens. The device made a sound that Jack could only describe as an electronic sigh, followed by a burst of holographic light that coalesced into a floating figure. Oh, good grief. You lot are even worse than last time, said the hologram, which appeared to be wearing a smoking jacket and holding a martini glass. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Pete, the Prehistoric Electronic Technical Entity, and before you ask, yes, I chose this appearance myself. No, I don't actually need the martini. And yes, Agent Thompson, this is all going on your permanent record. Agent Thompson, who had been about to classify the entire continent of Australia as top secret, froze mid-signature. We have a permanent record. You have 17, Pete replied, taking a holographic sip from his holographic martini. Would you like to know how many times you've accidentally classified your own lunch break? Not really. 42. Jack cleared his throat. Excuse me, Mr. Pete, you mentioned last time, what exactly do you mean by that? Oh, finally, someone asking the right questions. Pete brightened. Quite literally, his hologram grew a bit more luminous. Well, my dear Dr. Murphy, those charming cave paintings you humans have been studying for centuries, they're not exactly what you think they are. With a gesture, Pete projected a series of familiar cave paintings onto the wall of the cave. See this one from Lascaux? The one you all think is a hunting scene? It's actually a technical diagram for a warp drive cooling system. Those hunters are maintenance crews, and that bull is a quantum flux capacitor. Tommy, who had somehow acquired popcorn, raised his hand. What about the ones that look like handprints? Maintenance logs, Pete said cheerfully. Your ancestors had a terrible habit of signing off on repair jobs by slapping paint-covered hands on the instruction manual. Some things never change, really. But Jack sputtered, his entire archaeological career flashing before his eyes. That would mean that humanity had a thriving space program 40,000 years ago. Yes, exactly. Pete projected another image, this one showing what appeared to be the classic evolution of man diagram. Though I should point out that this famous image is actually backwards. It's supposed to show how your species gradually forgot how to stand up straight after spending too much time in zero gravity. The hunched posture was actually a common complaint among your early astronauts. Agent Thompson had given up on her classification attempts and was now taking notes on her hand, having run out of notebook space. So, humans were space travelers. Oh my dear, you were so much more than that, Pete chuckled. You were the galaxy's premier experts in experimental propulsion systems. Unfortunately, you were also the galaxy's premier experts in experimental propulsion system failures. Do you know how hard it is to crash a spaceship into a sun? Your ancestors managed to hit 3, simultaneously, from opposite directions. That's impossible, Jack protested. That's what the physics committee said, Pete agreed. They had to rewrite half their textbooks just to explain how you managed it. There's still an annual conference dedicated to studying the incident. It's called Humanity. How did they do that? And how do we prevent it from happening again? Tommy was frantically Googling on his phone. Wait, so all these ancient megalithic structures, mostly charging stations and parking lots, Pete confirmed. Stonehenge? Long-term spacecraft storage. The pyramids? Multi-level parking with valet service. The Nazca lines? Traffic routes for flying vehicles, complete with speed limits that your ancestors routinely ignored. Jack had to sit down. But why don't we remember any of this? Pete's hologram settled into a cross-legged floating position. Ah, now that's the interesting part. After the Triple Sun incident, as we call it, the Galactic Council decided that humanity needed a timeout. You know, to cool off and maybe develop a bit more impulse control. So they implemented what we call the Great Grounding. You grounded our entire species. It was that, or let you keep inventing new ways to break physics, Pete shrugged. The memory suppression was supposed to wear off gradually. But someone, and I'm not naming names, but their species has 3 heads and can't count past 7, accidentally set it for 40,000 years instead of 40 years. Tommy raised his hand again. So all those ancient alien theorists were completely wrong, Pete said firmly. But in a way that was accidentally right for all the wrong reasons. Those weren't aliens building your ancient monuments, it was you. You were the advanced civilization all along, just significantly more accident-prone than most. And now the suppression is wearing off, Agent Thompson asked, having moved on to writing notes on her other hand. In about, Pete checked an imaginary watch, 3 days, give or take. The council figured you've matured enough to handle the truth. Plus, they're really curious to see what you'll do with social media once you remember how to build anti-gravity generators. Jack looked around the cave with new eyes. The walls weren't just rock, they were covered in what he now recognized as technical specifications, maintenance logs, and what appeared to be several parking tickets. One last question, he said. Why did they leave you here? Pete's hologram smiled and raised his martini glass in a toast. Someone had to stay behind to make sure you didn't accidentally discover faster than light travel again before you remembered the safety protocols. Do you know what happens when you try to engage a warp drive before remembering to close the windows? No, neither does anyone else. The research team that tried it is still technically going faster than light. Backwards. Through time. They send postcards occasionally, though they arrive before they're written. Tommy had pulled out a fresh bag of popcorn. This is way better than my archaeology thesis was going to be. The Galactic Council's delegation arrived exactly 2 days before the memory suppression was set to wear off. They didn't come in a sleek spaceship or a beam of light. They came through what appeared to be a revolving door that suddenly appeared in the middle of the cave. Budget cuts explained the first alien to step through, brushing imaginary dust off their immaculate silver robe. We had to downgrade from dramatic light shows to practical interdimensional portals. I'm Ambassador Z6, and before anyone says anything, yes, I know my name sounds like a sci-fi cliché. I've filed 17 requests to change it, but the Council's bureaucracy is worse than your DMV. Jack, Tommy, and Agent Thompson stared at the ambassador, who looked remarkably like a tall, elegant praying mantis wearing reading glasses and carrying what appeared to be a briefcase made of light. Also, Z6 continued, I'm not actually a praying mantis. This is just the closest approximation your brains can handle without getting a migraine. In reality, I'm much more geometric. Pete's hologram materialized next to the ambassador. Ah, Z6. Still rocking the hypothetical arthropod look, I see. How's the wife? Still existing in 7 dimensions simultaneously. 8 now, Z6 said proudly. She's been taking extension courses. More aliens emerged from the revolving door, each looking like increasingly improbable combinations of Earth creatures wearing business attire. There was something that looked like a dolphin in a 3-piece suit floating on a cushion of air, a giraffe-like being wearing what could only be described as casual Friday attire, and what appeared to be a very professional cloud of sparkles wearing a name tag that read Bob. Right, Z6 said, adjusting their glasses with one of their many appendages. Let's get down to business. Humanity's grounding period is almost over, and we need to discuss your species' reintegration into galactic society. They pulled out what looked like a clipboard made of starlight. First order of business, please stop trying to classify this meeting as top secret, Agent Thompson. It's being live-streamed across 17 galaxies. Agent Thompson slowly lowered her stamp that read classified and tried to hide it behind her back. Now then, Z6 continued, we need to address the elephant in the room. Or rather, the 3 suns that your ancestors somehow managed to crash into simultaneously. Bob, would you pull up the presentation? The cloud of sparkles that was apparently named Bob dimmed slightly in what might have been embarrassment, then projected a holographic display showing 3 suns with spacecraft-shaped impact craters. How did we even manage that, Jack asked, his archaeological curiosity overriding his shock. That's the thing, Z6 said, sounding almost impressed. We still don't know. Your species has a unique talent for achieving the impossible through sheer determination and a complete disregard for the laws of physics. Do you know you're the only civilization that ever managed to create a traffic jam in orbit? In space, where there are literally infinite directions to go. That are you? Tommy raised his hand. Is that why we got grounded? Partially, Z6 admitted. The final straw was when your ancestors tried to use a black hole as a roundabout. The paperwork for that one is still propagating through space-time. We're expecting the last form to be filled out sometime next century. The Council had to make a choice, the dolphin in the suit added. Either ground humanity until they develop better judgment, or let them keep inventing new ways to turn the universe into their personal demolition derby. So you made us forget everything, Agent Thompson asked, having moved on to writing notes on her shoes, having run out of hand space. The memory suppression was supposed to be temporary, Z6 explained. Just long enough for your species to develop things like impulse control and basic traffic safety awareness. Unfortunately, someone. Here they glared at the giraffe-like being, who suddenly became very interested in the cave ceiling, entered 40,000 years instead of 40 years in the temporal suppression field. In my defense, the giraffe being said, your decimal points look a lot like space debris. Yes, well, Zeus continued. The point is, your grounding period is almost over. In approximately 24 hours, the memory suppression will wear off, and every human on Earth will remember their species' true history, including all the technical knowledge that came with it. Is that safe? Jack asked, eyeing Tommy, who was currently trying to take a selfie with Bob the Sparkle Cloud. Probably not, Zizix admitted. But the Council has implemented some safeguards. For instance, we've installed universal speed limits in all nearby solar systems. We've also replaced all your potential black hole roundabouts with proper cosmic interchanges. And most importantly, we've updated the galactic insurance policies. What about the ancient smartphone that started all this? Agent Thompson asked. Oh, that, Pete chimed in. That was just my alarm clock. I set it for 40,000 years ago, but I hit snooze a few times. Sorry about that. Zizix checked their Starlight clipboard again. Now, before the memories return, we need to go over a few ground rules. Rule 1, no more using quasars as drift racing tracks. Rule 2, the phrase "hold my beer and watch this" is officially banned in any context involving experimental propulsion systems. The list went on, each rule sounding more specific and yet somehow more necessary than the last. Jack couldn't help but wonder what exactly his ancestors had been up to that necessitated a rule specifically prohibiting the use of supernovas as mood lighting for space parties. As Zizix droned on about the proper procedures for parallel parking in 4 dimensions, Tommy leaned over to Jack and whispered, "Do you think this will affect my grade in advanced archaeological methods?" Jack watched as Bob the Sparkle Cloud tried to demonstrate proper cosmic traffic signal etiquette, while the dolphin in the suit argued about the definition of a legal U-turn around a neutron star. "Tommy," he said, "I think this is going to affect everyone's everything." "So you really want to know about the Triple Sun incident?" Pete asked, materializing a holographic armchair to go with his ever-present martini. The delegation had taken a break for lunch, though Bob the Sparkle Cloud's concept of lunch involved absorbing electromagnetic radiation while making appreciative humming sounds. "I mean, how bad could it have been?" Tommy asked, still trying to get a good angle for a selfie with the revolving door to space. "Picture this," Pete began, as holographic images appeared around them. 40,000 years ago, humanity had just invented something they called the multi-lock drift drive. The name itself should have been a warning sign, as anything with that many impressive-sounding words in its title is usually trouble. The hologram showed a spaceship that looked suspiciously like a hot rod with wings. Your ancestors had decided that regular faster-than-light travel was, and I quote from the official records, "totally boring. My dude," so they invented a drive system that could drift through the fabric of space-time itself. "That doesn't sound so bad," Jack said. "They tested it by trying to drift around a sun," Pete continued. "One sun, just one. Simple course approach sun, drift around it, look cool, go home. That was the plan." Ambassador Zizix, who had returned from their lunch break, which had involved elaborate interpretive dance, added, "The preliminary calculations actually looked quite sound. Well, except for the part where someone had doodled little smiley faces over all the decimal points." "The first sign of trouble," Pete said. "Projecting new images was when the test pilot activated the drive while saying, and this is recorded in the ship's log, hey. Why all watch this? The second sign was when the ship accidentally created a temporary wormhole. The third sign was when that wormhole turned out to be more of a worm pretzel." The hologram showed a spacecraft executing what could only be described as a cosmic donut, leaving trails of bent spacetime in its wake. Through a series of events that still make theoretical physicists wake up screaming, Pete continued. The ship managed to be in 3 places at once, which would have been fine, except those 3 places were directly inside 3 different suns. "But that's impossible," Jack protested. "The energy requirements alone." "Oh, the energy wasn't the problem," Zizix interjected. "The problem was that your ancestors had somehow managed to make the laws of physics throw up their hands and go on strike. Do you know how hard it is to make universal constants file a formal complaint?" The really impressive part, Pete added, was that the pilot survived. They were found 3 days later, floating in space, perfectly fine, holding a camera and asking if anyone got that on video. Agent Thompson, who had moved on to writing notes on small pieces of cave wall after running out of shoe space, looked up. "So that's why we got grounded, because we broke physics." "Not exactly," Zeke said. "The council was actually quite impressed. Horrified, but impressed. No, you got grounded because of what happened next. What happened next? Tommy asked, now trying to teach Bob how to do a TikTok dance. Your species decided to start a space drift racing leap, Pete said with a holographic shudder. The posters for it literally said physics. More like Guide 6, the council had to act fast before humanity turned the entire galaxy into a giant racetrack. But surely there must have been some responsible humans who opposed this, Jack asked. Oh yes, Zizix confirmed. They were the ones organizing the betting pools. Pete brought up more images, this time showing various archaeological sites from around Earth. After the Great Grounding, we had to hide all the evidence. Those mysterious ancient structures everyone argues about. Most of them were just poorly disguised parking tickets. Parking tickets. Your ancestors had a habit of parking their spaceships in really inappropriate places, Pete explained. The Sphinx? That was originally a no parking sign. The Easter Island heads? Traffic cameras? Stonehenge? A particularly elaborate wheel clamp for repeat offenders. And nobody noticed, Agent Thompson asked. Oh, people noticed, Zizix said. They just came up with increasingly elaborate alternative explanations. Our favorite was the one about ancient aliens. Humans literally looked at their own parking infrastructure and said, "Must have been aliens. Do you know how hard it is to keep a straight face during those documentary interviews?" But why are you telling us all this now? Jack asked. Because in about 12 hours, everyone on Earth is going to remember everything Pete said. And we thought it might be nice to give you some context before your entire species collectively remembers that time they tried to use the moon as a disco ball. The what? Oh yes, Zizix nodded. That's actually why it's tidally locked. The motors broke halfway through installation. We just sort of left it that way. Easier than explaining to the council why humanity needed a giant space disco ball in the first place. Tommy had finally succeeded in teaching Bob a TikTok dance, which was creating some interesting temporal distortions in the cave. So what happens when everyone remembers? Pete and Zizix exchanged looks. Well, Pete said carefully, let's just say it's going to be an interesting day for physics teachers everywhere. And somewhere in the distance, 3 suns simultaneously developed a nervous twitch. The moment of memory restoration arrived with considerably less fanfare than anyone expected. There was no dramatic light show, no sudden enlightenment, no cosmic revelation. Just a lot of people around the world simultaneously saying, "Oh," and then checking their garages for spaceships that hadn't been there for 40,000 years. Her, said Tommy, who had just remembered how to calculate faster-than-light trajectories. That explains why I always doodle hyperdrive schematics in the margins of my notes. Indeed, said Ambassador Zeeks, who was watching Earth's collective revelation through a series of holographic monitors. Though I must say, humanity has shown remarkable restraint in the last few hours. We expected at least 3 attempts to build a wormhole generator out of household appliances by now. About that, Agent Thompson said, finally having run out of surfaces to write notes on. I just remembered why I'm so bad at keeping secrets. She pulled out her phone and showed them her social media feed. Apparently, I used to be the Galactic Council's head of transparency and public relations. That actually explains a lot, Zeeks admitted. Jack, meanwhile, was having his own crisis, so all my archaeological research was actually just me documenting my own species' parking violations. If it helps, Pete offered, you're now the world's leading expert on prehistoric traffic law. The cave was getting crowded as more officials arrived, both human and alien, to process humanity's reintegration into galactic society. Bob the Sparkle Cloud had started a TikTok channel about galactic diplomacy that was already trending across 12 dimensions. Now, Zizix announced, pulling out their Starlight clipboard again, we just need to complete the final paperwork to officially end humanity's grounding period. After that, you'll be free to rejoin galactic society, provided you follow the new safety guidelines and Dr. Murphy. Please don't touch that. But it was too late. Jack, who had been backing away from a particularly enthusiastic group of newly remembered astrophysicists, had accidentally bumped into the revolving door to space. The door started spinning, faster and faster, creating a swirling vortex of cosmic energy. Oh dear, said Pete, watching as the vortex grew. That's not supposed to happen. The dimensional stabilizers, shouted Zeeks. Quick, someone needs to know. Not like that. If we could just, oh, this is bad. But Jack, showing the same accidental genius that had characterized humanity's entire relationship with space travel, tripped again. This time, he fell directly into the control panel, face planting onto exactly the right combination of buttons. The vortex collapsed in on itself, then expanded, then did something that made Bob the Sparkle Cloud emit a high-pitched whistle of surprise. When it was over, the revolving door had somehow turned itself inside out through 7 different dimensions and created what appeared to be a perfect parallel parking spot in space-time. There was a long moment of silence. Did Zizix consulted their notes frantically? Did Dr. Murphy just accidentally solve the 3-body problem and create a stable pocket universe? Not only that, Pete said, examining the readings with his holographic monocle which had appeared solely for this purpose, he's also inadvertently created the galaxy's first completely safe parallel parking system. The Council's been trying to do that for millennia. Jack picked himself up, straightened his glasses, and tried to look like he'd meant to do that all along. Well said, Zizix, putting away their clipboard. I suppose this proves that humanity hasn't changed that much after all. You're still achieving the impossible through a combination of accident, chaos, and sheer dumb luck. Is that a bad thing? Tommy asked. Bad? My dear boy, it's exactly why we're letting you back into galactic society. The universe needs more of whatever it is that makes humans look at the laws of physics as more of a polite suggestion than actual rules. Plus, added Pete, the galaxy's been terribly boring without humanity's unique approach to space travel. Did you know some species actually follow traffic laws? Voluntarily. So we're officially ungrounded, Agent Thompson asked hopefully. Yes, Zizix sighed. Though heaven help the galaxy when humanity remembers how to build solar system-wide sound systems. Those space parties of yours were legendary. Speaking of which, Tommy said, showing them his phone, I just found my ancestors' old playlist. Anyone up for testing that theory about the moon being a disco ball? And so, humanity rejoined the galactic community the same way they'd left it, with style, chaos, and a complete disregard for the apparent limitations of reality. Though this time, they remembered to install seatbelts. As for Jack Murphy, he became the galaxy's leading expert in accidental innovations, though he still occasionally crashed into things. Some habits, it seems, transcend even 40,000 years of memory suppression. And somewhere in space, 3 suns breathed a sigh of relief until they saw humanity's new parking system and started to worry all over again.